She was born in Flushing, Long Island,
And
in the Flushing Hospital.
and was this a doctor that you knew?
Oh, well, I was going to him for prenatal care.
Not a member of the ward or
No,
church?
Dr. Lawrence, and he was head of the obstetrics at the Flushing Hospital.
And do you remember how much it cost to deliver that baby?
It was $95 for the hospital and $100 to the doctor.
Amazing. And how long were you in the hospital?
12 days. They made an invalid out of me.
What year was that?
1936, June.
And you were in for 12 days. Was that normal?
That was the way they did. In fact, they had me dangle my legs over the bed in 10 days. That's how much motion I had. Didn't get up to go to the bathroom or anything.
You used a bedpan all that time.
All that time. That was ridiculous.
Your muscles must have been absolutely flaccid.
Well, yes, they were. I was just almost couldn't walk when I got up.
And then you went home, and was anybody there to care for
Well,
you?
my mother was going to come from Salt Lake and be with me. And then she had an attack of Meniere's disease with the inner ear, where it made her so dizzy she couldn't even get up and walk. She felt terrible not to be able to come. But Bill's brother Chet was teaching at Tufts Medical College in Boston. And so Vivian, his wife, came down and stayed with me. And I really needed her because I was just a patient myself.
Yeah. Well, did you have a normal delivery?
It was a strange delivery, if you can believe. I've never heard of anyone having it, and I guess they did. It's called oil and enema, oil and ether enema, which they put into you, and it stays there so that every time you have a labor pain, it deadens it. Isn't that strange? I've never heard of those.
Really?
But it was wonderful for me because then I would feel the pain, but it would be not harsh, you know. And the nurse sat right by my side and reading a book. She was watching for the dilation and when it was time. She said, when I see the head, I'll call Dr. Lawrence.
Oh, my.
And so it was so funny. I was kind of groggy, of course. So when she says, oh, I see the head now. And I said, is it a girl or a boy?
That's funny. Here you had been out seeing Broadway plays and going to movies and enjoying the city, and now you had an infant. How did your life change?
Completely changed, of course. It was a big change, but of course it was wonderful.
What was your experience as a family? Did you and Dad divide up the child care responsibilities?
Oh, he was very good, and he loved to take care of her and help with her. I remember one time the Stevens came and took me for a ride, and he was home with the baby, and she was sleeping when we left, but when we got home, he was almost beside himself. She was crying, and he didn't know what to do with her, and he was so upset, but...
So you were there for 3 more years, this was still in Flushing, I suppose.
Bayside.
Bayside.
But no, Bill started working in Manhattan and going in every day. But we still stayed in Bayside. But Shirley was only 15 months old when we left there.
To go to Chicago.
So we went from Bayside to a section of which is called Rogers Park.
That's in the city.
It's in the city, but it's like a little it's a section. And there were mostly Jewish people there. We didn't know when we moved there, but we fit in fine. But there was also a Catholic school just a quarter of a block from our place. And I took her out in her stroller and walked around. She always called the nuns the teachers. They're the teachers. She'd see them because they wore their nuns' outfits. And then she played with a little Jewish girl called Snoozy. That was her nickname. and they played a lot together. She and I. Her mother would take Snoozy and I'd take Shirley, and we'd go to the beach, or we'd ride all along in those shopping areas in Rogers Park.
All right. Was there a chapel, an LDS chapel, that you could attend?
There was one in Logan Square. I'd been there for many, many years, and the mission home was right next to the chapel. But we went to the Edgewater Beach Hotel because we were in the North Shore part of the church.
So church was held in a hotel?
It was held in a beautiful Edgewater Beach Hotel right down on the beach off of Sheridan Road. And they were very, very kind and helpful to us there, because we never knew for sure which room we would be in for the chapel, because they had many large ones. The East Lounge, the West Lounge, the Grand Ballroom. So we always had meetings in one of those. And then, of course, on Sunday there was not as much business, so we'd have rooms for different classes. They were very, very gracious, and we had our big gold and green balls there too.
What was a week of church meetings like? I mean, what meetings did you attend? How long were they? And through the week, how many were there?
Well, we used to drive to Edgewater Beach Hotel for Sunday school. Then we'd go back for
How long was that, and what time?
Well, that would be, if it had started, I think it had started about 9:30 or 10. And then we'd have a sacrament meeting in the afternoon at 2.
So you'd go home between Sunday
We'd go
school?
home, and it was 10 miles each way to base.
Go home and have your Sunday dinner, go back to sacrament meeting. That would be another hour and a half. When was priesthood and Relief Society?
Well, Relief Society was during the week on Tuesdays. Tuesday morning I would go to Relief Society, and Ruby James was the president of the Relief Society, and she asked me to be the social relations teacher right away. And so she would pick me and Shirley up and take me to the meetings.
Were there any other meetings during the week?
And primary was held during the week also. And then later on I was a primary teacher.
Did you have MIA or mutual?
Yes, but of course Shirley was not old enough. But we would go occasionally to mutual.
Did the church sponsor dances?
Yes, we used to have beautiful gold and green balls and choose the queen for the day. Shirley performed as a little, like a butterfly in one of the gold and green balls. They danced, the girls in her age. And we have pictures of her doing that. And then, of course, so for 10 years we went to the Edgewater Beach Hotel. And then the church bought a beautiful mansion on Ridge Avenue in Evanston and converted it to a church. So that the second floor had they tore out partitions and had a big room for the chapel.
During this period of time, you had another child. Do you want to tell us about that?
Bill was born June 23rd, 1940. So he was 4 years younger than Shirley by 2 days. And that was a different kind of a trial to go through. I got along fine. Dr. Clark, who belonged to our ward, was my doctor. But the day that Bill was going to, he decided to choose a day to have him born because we were waiting. So he gave me quinine and was supposed to speed up the delivery. I went to the hospital Sunday morning early, and he said to the nurse, "Now give her these pills when she gets, or at a certain time." And before that certain time came, I was in such agony with labor pains, and I thought, why don't they give me that medicine now? The nurse said, no, the doctor said, not until noon. And I was suffering these agonizing labor pains terribly. And Bill wasn't even in with me at that time. And then when they took me into the delivery room, I saw him. And then when they gave me the pill, it reacted quickly, and the baby was born quite
And
soon.
what were Bill and Shirley like as little children there in, this was still, well, this is now in Skokie, correct?
Yes.
What were they like as little children?
Oh, they were sweet, of course. We thought they were wonderful.
And Bill was much sweeter than Shirley?
He was a sweet baby and very, very, very with his love and caring. And he used to sit on the lap with his arms around my neck a lot and tell me how much he loved me. And he was just real, very tender. And he and Shirley played very well together and enjoyed each other. They'd have little squabbles, but just like any children would have. And
Now he was kind of a crybaby, wasn't he?
well, he was more of a crybaby than Shirley. It seemed like he had a little different, a little more sensitive personality, maybe. I don't know.
What were the squabbles between Shirley and Bill about?
Oh, mostly with toys and that, just competition with each wanting the same toy or wanting to be the boss
Do you
over the
remember
other.
any particular play activities that they liked to do together?
Well, we used to buy them good play school toys, they were called, because they could create so many things with them. For instance, we had a little wagon that was filled with different shapes of wooden toys, wooden blocks, not blocks, but they were different shapes, and they could make all kinds of things. And you kids played with those for years, all the time, when you were growing up, and been used a lot since. And then you had the little wooden play school toys where you'd learn to hammer things and to put different angles of wood through certain holes that fit, so that you really was learning something, being creative.
What about a fort? Didn't we have a fort across the street?
Oh yes, you kids on the block. There were quite a few kids on the block. And used to dig under and have like a fort kind of under the ground. And then your dad decided to build a big exercise, like a swing and trapeze bars across the street. And he built it with very, very strong, 4x8s, I guess, in lumber, so that it was real sturdy, and the swing would be a big, big swing way out. So all the kids on the block enjoyed those activities over there for many years. And when we left, Kedvale and moved to Jerome Avenue, where we bought our house, we left the swing there. And after we visited later on, they built houses there, but they had moved the swing. Somebody in the neighborhood had moved that down to another empty lot for the neighborhood kids. But then you used to build things under the porch. There was a kind of a back porch at our apartment building, the 2 flats. And you kids would make train things and all kinds of things, imaginary things down under that porch. And there was a nice sand pile right out in the backyard by the garage too, that you played in for hours.
And then you moved from Kedvale to Jerome Avenue.
When you were 10 years old.
The Kedvale building, what was that like? And how did it differ from the
It
Jerome
was
building?
6 rooms on the first floor and second floor. And we rented one apartment. We lived on the second floor and rented the lower floor.
Did you own that building?
We did. We bought that. And then when 10 years later, we paid $10,000 for it. And
That was in 1939 or 40.
it was 1950.
And then in 1950 you bought the Jerome Avenue house. Right. And how much was that?
And let's see.
I can tell you, it was $27,500.
We sold $27,500, was it? You know, it was interesting. We were just about to buy new carpeting for our Kedvale apartment. And we thought, well, let's look at homes a little bit before we spend all that money for new carpeting. So we went out looking at houses, and we found this one on Jerome.
And when you moved to Jerome, did you find any different in kind of lifestyle issues? How did that change your life?
Well, we were still in the same ward. There were I think only 3 families, LDS families in Skokie. And Bill was 10 when we moved, and he was just beside himself with sorrow at leaving his friends on Kedvale Avenue. And I said, Bill, I'll bet within 6 weeks you'll be glad we moved, because you'll have new friends and you'll be happy about the move. And he had to admit in 6 weeks he had met some nice friends.
And because he was riding his bicycle, he got hit by a car.
Yes, and if you don't think that scared us, somebody phoned and said, your son was just hit by a car down at the intersection of Jerome. Said, we're bringing him home. And I thought, but the first thing I knew, here Bill drives up by himself. And I was so relieved to see that he was not badly hurt. It had bent his bicycle some, and he got a bump or so, but he was perfectly all right. They wanted to take him to the hospital, have him checked, but he said, no, I'm fine. And he was.
And
insurance
as I remember, the insurance adjuster came and gave me $25 to repair my bicycle, which was enough to buy a new bicycle. But you wouldn't give me the money because you didn't think that was a way to earn any money.
Yeah, we didn't want you to think being hit by a car was a good way to earn money.
But around 1956 or 7, Jewish families from the near south side started moving.
No, really from Rogers Park, where we first lived. They came in just like they wanted to take over the town, and they did. When we left, which was in 1970, there was now 75,000 people in Skokie, and they said maybe 2/3 of them were Jewish.
Well, tell us about Dad's work during this time.
Well, it was made an offer to move to Chicago, where they were opening a branch of this company, to come as junior engineer to Kelly Johnson, who was a good friend of his and worked for Hazeltine, and he would be the junior. And we did move then to Chicago, and Bill worked Hazeltine research.
No. Now, Dad would have been called up into the Army during World War II, as I remember, except that he had a security clearance job because Hazeltine was working on military applications of technology like radar.
That's right. So he used to wear it when he'd go to New York, or when he was going into Manhattan. He wore a tag with his picture and his name and credentials on to get into the building, because there was secret work. And instead of serving in the service, then Northwestern University hired him to teach math and physics to military people. So that was how he served in the...
What kind of hobbies or activities did you have, Mom, while you were there in Skokie?
Well, I was always interested in crocheting. In fact, when we were living in Bayside, Long Island, I made my first Afghan, which was made in autumn colors of brown and yellow and rust. And Shirley has that down at her studio. That was the first one I made. And so I did a lot of crocheting, a lot of needlepoint.
Did you have a satisfying social life?
Oh, very. Yes, we did. We had all the people from the West would get together for social things, and we had many parties and dances and get-togethers for the holidays. And
did you have people over for dinner?
yes, we did. We used to have, I know in Chicago we had missionaries, especially when you were on your mission, we had some of the missionaries in our area come and have dinner and birthday dinners with us.
I remember very often on Sundays having parties with your dearest friends. The Olsons and the Deckers would come over.
And Christensen's, yeah. E.A. and Helen. Yes, we did have a lot of good times with good close friends. They were very close friends, like family. And Christensen's, yeah. E.A. and Helen. Yes, we did have a lot of good times with good close friends. They were very close friends, like family. I belonged to a women's club, and we were all LDS and lived in the Chicago area, and we would meet in each other's homes and play the game of 500, which was a simpler game than bridge, because we didn't take up bridge, but we used to play 500, and that was really a lot of fun.
What about your church callings?
Do we start with?
Yeah, start over.
Bill was asked to be the pianist at Sunday school, and also many years he played for sacrament meeting also. And
this is Dad.
Yes, your dad. And so he was very active, and then at one time he was superintendent of the Sunday school at the Edgewater Beach Hotel. And later in Chicago he was the stake Sunday school superintendent, and used to travel around to the different wards to visit Sunday schools.
And what about you?
Oh, and as I've told you, I worked in the primary and the Relief Society. I've always had a job in Relief Society, and have been a visiting teacher, I guess, practically all my married life, and still am now. And we had a ladies' chorus. We called it the North Shore Ladies Chorus, and there were about 15 of us in there. Mary Killian was our accompanist, and Thelma Midgley Mary was the director, and Thelma Midgley was our accompanist for most of those years. And we used to go around and sing at clubs, give recitals or programs at clubs. I remember even having them come to Skokie to a women's club and giving a program there. And at that time, because I lived in Skokie, I was a narrator and told a little bit about the musical numbers we sang. And then when I was in Skokie, I was also on the school board, and I was in charge, no, not the school board, the League of Women's Voters, and I was on the part to take charge of the parks, keep the League of Women Voters all up to date on what was going on in the town with the parks. And we had 14 lovely parks in Skokie.
Now, Dad was an organist during this time.
Yes, but of course at the Edgewater Beach and some of the places they just had pianos. But when we moved on Ridge Avenue, the church bought an electronic organ, and that was what he played. And then he had bought an organ too, a Hammond organ, which he played at home a lot. He used to get up early on Saturday mornings and wake us up to nice music.
And when he finally was released from organist, how many years had he been in the calling?
Well, in Chicago, he had been organist for 27 years, and he had also played the organ in New York. When we met at the Good Citizenship League, he played a pump organ. That was what they had. And he had been used to the pump organ because he played that in Logan when he was just 15.
Then Dad retired. 1970?
The end of 1970, he retired. He was 66 and a half years old. And of course, that was when Shirley had then been a widow for 2.5 years, but we had been out for Christmas and also for the summer to be with her for vacations. But we were in New York to a special Hazeltine banquet for Bill's retirement. And Shirley called us in New York, if you can imagine. That was kind of scary. And she said, "I found a house out in Salt Lake that I think you'd be happy with." And we said, "Well, do you have some money you can put down for earnest money?" to hold it for us? And she says, yes, she would. So that's how we got our house. We didn't ever see it until we moved out here. And this is the house we've lived in for 32 years now.
What kind of husband was Dad?
Oh, he was a good man. Just so much integrity and honesty and sweetness and demonstrative. He used to say I wasn't as demonstrative, but I came from Welsh and English, and so did he come from Welsh, or from English background, and Danish. No, Norwegian. His mother was from a Norwegian family, Halverson. And his dad was born and raised in England and came to Utah when he was about 16 with his family. And they went to Logan when they first came here.
Did you always feel that Dad loved you?
Always. He was a very, very devoted husband. Yeah.
And was he a good father? What kind of father was he?
I thought he was a very good father. I hope his children also thought that. I know that he was always interested in things to do with hands and creating. And you have taken that up a lot because you worked with him in lots of things. You and Shirley both in the dark room with doing pictures and with shooting the guns and joining the North Shore Gun Club. You and Dad used to go to the gun club once a week and shoot. And then he even put in one of these steel traps in our basement so you could even shoot in the house on Jerome Avenue.
Mom, tell us a little bit about the very sad final years of Dad's life, will you?
Well, you know, for many years it was very mild, and I just thought he was getting forgetful of current events. And he used to repeat himself quite a lot. He'd tell us the same stories, and of course the kids loved it. He'd tell stories about things that happened in his work and his with working with Hazeltine engineers. And then I remember Harold Wheeler, who was the president of the original company, called Bill several times after he retired and talked to him and asked him questions because he was writing a book on Hazeltine. And Bill would be able to tell him quite a few things in the past that happened. But then it got so, he'd say, well, Harold, I don't remember that. And so I know there were a lot of things in Harold's book that Dad contributed, but then they got so he couldn't remember a lot of this. Also did enjoy walking, and he walked a lot. He had a certain places that he'd walk around here in the area. The neighborhood always saw Bill with his hat on and always tipped his hat when he was saying hello to walk and safely go and come home.
Mom, do you have any words that you'd like to share with your children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren?
I'm always telling him, now listen, I'm your mother. I have more experience. I'm older and wiser, and you better listen. My years of living from horse and buggy days to spaceships and walking on the moon and so many wonderful developments during my lifetime that great-grandchildren can't even imagine the things that I have lived through, which were real. The 2 world wars that I lived through, knowing about them, and the Depression, and so many things that have been interesting to me and to my family and the children. But sometimes things come so much easier and so much earlier in their lives now that they don't realize what we as the generation of the early 1900s have gone through.
Well, I want to add, Mom, that you have been an extraordinary mom. I cannot imagine a mother that showed more love, more devotion to her family and children than you. And you will always be a blessing to the lives of everybody that you touch, and most of all to Shirley and me.